Hey everybody, it's Wendy. Welcome. So excited that you're here with me today for another basics video. So today we are going to talk about measurements and how to use a ruler. So this is your standard 12-inch ruler. And then I've got some pieces of cardstock here that I've pre-cut to show you some basic measurements for card making. The first step, I think, is to show you how a ruler works. And I hope I'm not offending anybody, but I have found that there's a lot of people out there that actually struggle with how to use a ruler, especially for card making. So obviously each mark that you see is 1 inch. So the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4. Then the other side of the ruler, the side that's at the bottom here, is centimeters. And that is what is used, that's the metric system. And that's used in the UK and basically everywhere else in the world except the United States. So I'm just going to focus on showing you the measurements for the United States. So each tick mark that you see here makes up a 16th, and 16/16ths make up 1 inch. So every one of those little tick marks is a 16th. As you get further into the inch, you have a higher 16th. The second little tick mark that you see, or ruler mark, is an 1/8. So everywhere that you see this second line that goes down a little bit further than the first line is an 1/8. And you can see that I'm skipping over the 1/16th mark. So there are 8 eighths in 1 inch. The next one up would be a quarter. So this is 1/4. So there are 4/4 in 1 inch. And then obviously the next markup is a 1/2 inch. There are 2 halves in 1 inch. So this is the breakdown of each of those little tick marks on your ruler. So now I wanted to show you how to read some different measurements. I apologize, I am sick, so I'm fighting through this. So if we were going to look for 1 3/8, we would go to the 1 inch mark and then count up 3 eighths. 1, 2, 3 to this point. So you can see this is 1 3/8. If we wanted to go to 2 5/16, we would go to the 2 inch mark first, and then we would count 5 of the 16th lines. And that is 2 5/16. So in card making, a lot of the time we don't use 5/16, 3/8, things like that for basic card sizes. That is more often used for scoring, like for a box or some sort of special thing that you're making might have interesting measurements. But we're going to talk about very basic card making. This sheet of paper is 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches. This is half of a sheet of regular size 8.5 by 11 inch paper. So you can get 2 cards out of one sheet of 8.5 by 11 inch paper. And you can do it 2 different ways. You can do it the short way, which I call the short way, which is this way. You can cut it in half this way. And then the other option is 4 1/4 by 11 inches. So you're cutting the paper in half the hot dog way. That's what my daughter calls it, hot dog and hamburger. So I'm sorry about my focus going in and out there. So this is 4 1/4 inches by 11 inches long. So we've only cut the paper one time in half. And that's the same for the other sheet of paper as well. This creates your very basic card size, what a lot of people refer to as the A2 card size. So how we go to half of 11 inches is 5.5. So we would score this paper at 5.5 inches. So as you can see, when I fold this over, it's going to make an A2 size card. And now the completed card size is 4 1/4 by 5. This is a top folding or side folding card. On the hamburger style, we would go half of 8.5, which would be 4 1/4. So you can measure to 4 1/4 and then fold it in half. What I recommend is just folding it in half without doing any measuring. It will be the finished size you're looking for if you fold it in half. But these, I just wanted to share the measurements. So then when you open it, it's a side opening or top opening card, but it's hamburger style. So those are the two types of cards that are very, very basic. You can see in the end, they're exactly the same size. They've just been cut in two different directions so that they fold differently. Okay, next up are our basic layering measurements. So this basic black cardstock is cut at 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And you can see here that it leaves a very narrow trim around the outside. So this mat is good when you're wanting just a super thin, small piece showing around the back. This is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And it gives you about 1/8 of an inch showing on the edges. This layer is cut at 4 inches by 5 1/4. And I would say that this is probably your most common layering size for your first layer on your cardstock. So 4 inches by 5 1/4. You can get 4 pieces of this out of one piece of 8.5 by 11 inch cardstock. You cut it down the middle, hot dog style, at 4 inches, and then cut it at 5 1/4, or vice versa, and you will get 4 sheets. This piece is cut at 3 3/4 by 5 inches. So now you can see here that we're just going down by 1/4 of an inch. If his measuring is hard for you, one of the things that you can do is always reduce your cardstock size by 1/4 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch on both sides. And you're always going to get a very nice layer. You could also do it by 1/8 of an inch and have a nice layer as well. Just you're not going to see as much of the cardstock peeking out. But here's a great example of what a card could look like if you layered with the measurements that I just wrote down on the side. So you would have the card base itself, another piece of cardstock, another piece of cardstock, and a final piece. So you can see here how it creates some really beautiful mats. Okay, so that is pretty much our basic measurements and how to create very basic card layers. You're always going to start with 8.5 by 5.5 inch piece of cardstock or 4 1/4 by 11 inch cardstock. Additionally, obviously you can cut as many different sizes as you want. You can just get your ruler out and measure in order to cut. Really quick, I wanted to show you how to read the Stampin' Trimmer. So the one spot or the 0 spot starts in the trough, what I call the trough. And then you're going to measure going left. So if I want to cut this cardstock at 4 inches, I'm going to line the end of the piece of paper up at 4 and slice. Now this piece of cardstock has been cut at 4 inches. Then I'm going to go 5 1/4 by lining it up at the 5 inch and 1/4 inch mark. So 5 1/4 and slice. Now I have 5 1/4 inch by 4 inch piece of cardstock. So let's say I wanted to do 3 inches. So, or let's see here, I changed my mind apparently. 2 3/8. So I went to the number 2 and then I counted over 3/8. And that gives me 2 3/8. It's very simple and easy to do once you get the basics down of how to do it. The rulers here go in different directions, but all the concepts are exactly the same. So from that little 0 mark or that trough mark, you're going to go out the other side to get your measurements. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you. It's one that I've been wanting to do and it was requested by a YouTube follower. So I super appreciate you following me and watching these videos. Give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, let me know what you thought, and I hope to see you again soon. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.